Today, we're going to get into a new report shedding some light on systemic racism in housing appraisals. Before we do, I'm Brittany Page. This is the Page Perspective. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please remember to click below and subscribe. About half of the views that I'm getting right now are from accounts that are not actually subscribed to the YouTube channel, and it helps me so much if you subscribe, so please subscribe. You can also follow me on Twitter or Instagram at Brittany Page on both. Let's just say follow me on Twitter while you can, while I'm still allowed to be there. Elon Musk is like firing people who criticize him on Twitter, so he may ban me shortly because yes, I have been trolling him. It's what he deserves. Also, keep the topic ideas coming. I so appreciate all of them. I think I may do a Q&A video coming up because some of the topics I think I can cover in a Q&A format, so keep those coming. So I want to talk about this new report. You may have heard some of these stories in recent months illustrating what is called the appraisal gap. And that is this difference in housing appraisal based on race, based on the difference between being white or being black. And sometimes you'll see these headlines about couples or individual homeowners who are black that decided to whitewash their homes after receiving a home appraisal that they feel undervalued their home. And whitewashing consists of essentially removing any trace that a black family lives in the home. They will remove family photos, they will remove books or posters or things that indicate that a black family lives there, and they will actually have a white person stand in for them to get a new appraisal, which then results in their home appraisal being even more than it was the first time. So let's look at a few of these headlines just to kind of refresh your memory with this phenomenon. So let's look at a few headlines just to kind of refresh your memory. This year, a black couple in Baltimore sued an appraiser and mortgage lender after whitewashing their home resulted in the home's value being appraised for $278,000 higher than when they had their own family photos and their own presence in their own home. A couple in Jacksonville, Florida did the same thing in 2020. Whitewashing their home resulted in a 40% increase in value, which amounted to $135,000. In 2021, a black homeowner in Indianapolis saw her home appraisal more than double after whitewashing her home. And this is after being lowballed in two appraisals. It went from $125,000 in the first appraisal to $110,000 in the second appraisal. And then after whitewashing her home, $259,000. And in this final one, we'll talk about a black couple in the San Francisco Bay Area saw a nearly $500,000 increase after whitewashing their home. So listen, I could rattle off countless stories of this happening as it has started to be picked up in the news, and you see these various headlines, but these are anecdotes. And anecdotes have so far not been convincing for certain groups of people that housing discrimination in appraisals is actually a thing that exists. So we're going to get to the data. And I know the data hasn't been super convincing for certain segments of people as well, but we're going to try our best today. Okay, we're going to try our best. The Federal Housing Finance Agency recently released the Uniform Appraisal Dataset, which is a comprehensive set of market appraisals that allows experts to, among other things, study discrimination in housing appraisals. And in response to this release, two sociologists went to work to analyze the data, and they released a new report. And that is called Appraised: The Persistent Evaluation of White Neighborhoods as More Valuable Than Communities of Color. And that is by two sociologists, Junia Howell and Elizabeth Korver-Glenn. Now, in this study, using this specific data set, they look specifically at metropolitan areas with populations greater than 500,000 with at least 50,000 residents of color, and they analyzed over 32 million appraisals. There's several notable things in this report, but I want to talk about a few main points. One of them is in 2020, the value of homes in predominantly white neighborhoods has increased on average by $136,000. That's more than double. That's more than double in communities of color. Think about the loss when it comes to wealth building. And that's really what's important here, is when you purchase a home, when you are a home owner, that is the biggest key to building wealth in this country and creating the intergenerational transmission of wealth as well. So we're talking about the inability to build wealth and the inability to pass down that wealth through generations to your children. That's what we're looking at here in this systemic racism, systemic discrimination that a lot of people want to pretend doesn't actually exist. Now, also in this report, they found that appraisers assign higher values to homes in white neighborhoods compared to comparable, similar homes in communities of color. And rather than improving over time, this inequality has actually increased by 75% over the last decade. So it's gotten worse. It has not gotten better. And I want to read directly from this new report. Racial inequality in home values directly contributes to persistent racial wealth gaps and residential segregation, which in turn influences racial inequalities in health, income, and educational outcomes. Home value inequalities are the result of appraisal practices that elevate white spaces as the most valuable. Addressing the increasing inequalities requires altering appraisal practices and rectifying past injustices. There has been widespread reluctance to accept the role of racial discrimination in housing appraisals for a very long time. I mean, we can't even agree on the history in this country. The history of slavery, teaching that to kids is controversial suddenly to the Republican Party. So when it comes to agreeing that systemic racism in housing appraisals exists and prevents or interferes with communities of color building wealth in this country, it's going to be a hard ask for Republicans to get on board. But in 2019, Andre Perry, a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution and author of Know Your Price, Valuing Black Lives and Property in America's Black Cities, he testified before the House Finance Services Committee on racial discrimination in housing appraisals. And he referenced research that came out before this report that showed that homes in Black neighborhoods are devalued by $48,000 on average. And I want you to watch as Representative Al Green asks this committee if they believe that discrimination plays a role in the devaluation of property for Black people.
Do you believe that invidious discrimination, invidious is harmful, invidious discrimination plays a role in the devaluation of property in neighborhoods that are predominated with minorities, but more specifically, Black people? If you do believe this, raise your hand. I want my staff who are recording this to be sure to get this picture. Would you raise your hand again, please? Only one person believes that invidious discrimination plays a role. So let me ask again, for fear that you didn't understand. If you think Black people are being discriminated when their property is being appraised, would you kindly raise your hand? One person on the panel. If you think that, for fear that I'm not communicating well, if you think that Black people are not being discriminated against when their property is being appraised, if you think they're not being discriminated against, kindly raise your hand. Okay, hands now. We're getting some consternation, I see.
So despite all of this evidence, the only person raising their hand to say that yes, discrimination plays a role in the devaluation of property for Black people is Andre Perry. And then he asks if these people believe that discrimination does not play a role, and people actually raise their hand saying, yes, I believe discrimination does not play a role in the devaluation of property for Black people. Despite all of this evidence, Despite all of this evidence, when study after study shows that discrimination does exist and that it causes harm. According to reporting from CityLab's Brenton Mock, an earlier study from Korver-Glenn and Howell, the same people who did this new report, used data from homeowners' self-reported appraisal values, finding that a neighborhood's concentration of non-white residents was an even stronger determinant of undervalued appraisals in 2015 than it was in 1980, shortly after federal laws were passed that were supposed to end this kind of discrimination. A similar study on appraisal bias from the Brookings Institution's Andre Perry found that Black homeowners nationally lost roughly $156 billion in home equity in 2017 alone due to under-evaluations. In 2021, a report from Freddie Mac or the Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation said that bias in the appraisal industry is pervasive and found that the percentage of undervalued appraisals increased in neighborhoods as the white population percentage decreased. So we have the evidence here. What are some of the solutions? Two are offered in this report, and the first one is reparations, and specifically they outline that in the form of targeted tax credits or stimulus programs in order to redirect wealth from people that have been unfairly advantaged due to race and redirecting it to people who have been discriminated against in housing appraisals based on race. The second is that they don't want to allow these housing appraisals to be based on past sales. Past sale prices are also due to racial discrimination, and they want to have innovation play a role in this to create new methods of determining home appraisals. So the most important thing here is that systemic racism does exist, that this interferes with the ability of communities of color to build wealth in this country. Republicans want to talk about the American dream. This is the best country in the world. This is where you can come, build wealth. You can be born into any situation and build wealth and come out of it. Well, you can't if this is what you're dealing with. If you have someone coming to appraise your home for hundreds of thousands of dollars less than it's actually worth because you're Black. And that's what's happening. So I cannot possibly cover everything that is contained within this awesome report, so I would highly recommend that you check it out in the link in the description below. Please let me know what you think of this. I would love to know. You can leave a comment below. You can call it 657-464-7609, or you can email us at idoubitit@dollemore.com. I so appreciate you taking the time to be here with me, discuss this with me, and I look forward to hearing all of your thoughts. Take care.